A woman in a stained uniform dragged a mop across a marble banquet floor. Her mascara was smeared. Her high heels were gone. 2 years ago, she wore custom clothing on magazine covers. She told photographers that her husband was a fool. Tonight, she scrubbed champagne out of a rug for tips and a bunk in the back. In a boardroom 30 stories up, Marcus Vail watched his empire collapse. Marcus was a developer whose face smiled from every billboard in the city. Every phone in the room was screaming. His stock line looked like a steep cliff. The double doors slid open. A redhead in a black coat entered the room. She dropped a folder on the polished table. The woman told Marcus that the bank had called in every single loan. Marcus laughed at her, but he should not have. The woman flipped the folder. She pointed to a signature on the last page and said one name. It was the name of the man Marcus had buried. It was the friend he had ruined. Marcus stopped laughing. In a luxury hotel lobby, a man in a torn coat walked to the bar. He dropped one coin on the counter and asked for water. Numbers that only the man could see exploded in the air. 90 seconds later, the hotel changed owners on paper. The man sipped his water and did not blink. On a rooftop, a man in an expensive suit ground an emerald necklace under his heel. A crowd clapped for him. That necklace belonged to a mother who recently died in a public hospital. Her son could not get her medicine in time. That laughing man was the reason for her death. He was about to find out who the son was. At a black iron gate, a woman knelt in the rain. Everything she owned fit inside one paper bag. She recited a cruel line she once said to her husband. The man on the other side of the gate made her repeat it. He would then decide if she ate tonight. Adrian Cole was a software wizard and a coffee addict. He was a quiet and decent man. Adrian built one of the largest tech firms in the city from a spare bedroom. On paper, Adrian was set for life. He had a lovely wife and a best friend from college. His wife was named Vanessa. She was a fashion heiress with a loud laugh and cold eyes. Vanessa often introduced Adrian as her sweet little techie. Her family ran a fashion label that had been losing money for years. 2 Christmases ago, her parents begged Adrian to save the family name. Adrian poured his personal savings into their firm. He co-signed on their debt. Adrian signed the papers without reading them. He thought a good husband should trust his in-laws. It was a very stupid mistake. Marcus Vail was the best friend of Adrian since university. Adrian personally hired Marcus into his own company. Marcus was charming and sharp. He sat at the dinner table of Adrian twice a week. However, Marcus had spent the past 3 years sleeping with the wife of Adrian. The setup was complete, and the bomb was planted. Adrian turned 35 years old. Vanessa threw him a party at the top-floor ballroom of a swanky hotel. There were silver balloons and a string quartet. Every executive from the company was on the guest list. Vanessa and Marcus stood together at the head of the room. Adrian walked in and thought his wife had outdone herself. Vanessa clinked a spoon on her glass to quiet the room. She lifted her champagne and announced that she had news for her husband. Adrian was beaming while cameras pointed at him. Vanessa said she wanted a divorce. The music stopped and the smile of Adrian froze. Marcus stepped up beside her and slid an arm around her waist. Marcus mentioned that he and Vanessa had been together for 3 years. The situation became worse. The father of Vanessa held a stack of documents. Adrian had signed away his voting shares in his own company. He also signed a personal guarantee on $80 million of debt. Adrian had co-signed his own execution. Marcus told him it was time to sign one more paper. Marcus said that if Adrian did not sign, the debt would land on him. All of the accounts of Adrian were about to be frozen. The medical fund for the mother of Adrian was in one of those accounts. Adrian looked at his wife and begged for mercy. Vanessa lifted her glass and smiled. She said that trash leaves through the back door. The whole ballroom laughed at Adrian. His own executives were laughing. Vanessa and Marcus filmed the moment with their phones. Adrian signed the documents. Every dollar he ever earned changed hands. He lost every share of his company and every patent. Adrian dropped the pen and his knees buckled. Marcus shoved Adrian and the man fell. Adrian hit his mouth on the corner of the table. Blood hit the marble floor. Vanessa stepped over him in her heels. She told Adrian not to drip on the rented rug. The room laughed again. That was the birthday. Adrian crawled out through a service door. He hit the street and his phone buzzed. His personal accounts were frozen and his cards were canceled. He tried to call his parents and his lawyer. No one answered the phone. By dawn, 3 men in leather jackets waited outside his front door. Vanessa's parents had sold his address to lenders. The men introduced themselves with steel-toe boots. They broke 2 of his ribs. The men told him he had 48 hours to pay. Adrian dragged himself to a public hospital. He tried to check on his mother. Her cancer treatment fund was empty. Vanessa had used her power of attorney to steal the money. The hospital discharged his mother because the bill was not paid. Adrian got his parents into a taxi. He took them to their small home. His mother gave him her emerald necklace to sell. Adrian refused and promised to fix everything. He stepped outside to figure out a plan. Police cars pulled up outside the house. Someone had filed a detailed fraud complaint against Adrian. They claimed he embezzled from the fashion firm. The records were all fake, but the police arrested Adrian anyway. Adrian was cuffed on the porch. He sat in a holding cell for 9 weeks. Every time he asked for a phone call, there was a delay. Every message he sent was blocked by Marcus. He was living inside a soundproof room while the world was edited without him. Adrian got out on a technicality 9 weeks later. His lawyer handed him a folder and drove away. Inside the folder were 2 death certificates. His father died 6 weeks ago from a heart attack. His mother died 3 weeks ago from untreated cancer. She died in a public ward because there was no money. Her son was in a cell, and she died alone. Adrian did not scream or cry. His face became empty and cold. Adrian walked to the cemetery in the rain. He stood by the 2 fresh graves of his parents. His mother did not have a headstone yet. A neighbor caught him at a red light on his way back. The neighbor said the people in the area paid for the burials. Vanessa would not help. Vanessa had even taken the last of the jewelry from his mother. The neighbor gave Adrian a photo of his mother laughing. Adrian put the photo in his coat pocket. Every screen he passed played the same news clip. Marcus Vale was now a tech mogul and was engaged to Vanessa. They were having a big party on a rooftop tonight. The news called Adrian a disgraced former chief executive officer. Adrian went to the party. He did not have a plan. He stepped off the elevator into a crowded rooftop. Vanessa and Marcus saw him. The rooftop fell silent for a single beat. It was the kind of silence that suggests the music technician panicked. Then Marcus laughed in a loud and deliberate way. He waved Adrian inside as if the man were nothing more than entertainment. Marcus invited his old friend to join the group. He jokingly hoped that Adrian was not there to give a toast. Adrian did not answer as he walked straight across the rooftop. The crowd parted to let him through. He stopped in front of Vanessa. She wore an emerald necklace that once belonged to his mother. He stared at the jewelry. Vanessa smirked at him. She told him that he could look but could not touch. She suggested he should have taken better care of his family jewelry. She claimed her father found the piece in an old pawn shop. Everyone in the circle knew that was a lie. However, nobody seemed to care. Adrian started to lift his hand. Marcus lived for moments like this. He stepped in and plucked the necklace off the throat of Vanessa. Marcus let the jewelry dangle in the air. He asked Adrian if he wanted the necklace back. Marcus told his former friend that nothing belonged to him anymore. He noted that nothing Adrian touched remained his. Then the man performed a theatrical gesture. 100 witnesses watched the scene. Many of them held up their phones to record. Marcus dropped the necklace onto the marble floor. He ground the jewelry under his shoe and twisted his heel. The emerald cracked into pieces. The gold twisted out of shape. Somewhere in that small pile of dust was a precious pendant. His father had placed it around his mother's neck at their wedding. The crowd cheered, and someone shouted a loud exclamation. Vanessa laughed with the same sound she made at the birthday. Adrian stopped breathing for about 10 seconds. His hands hung open at his sides. Blood filled his mouth because he bit the inside of his cheek. Something behind his eyes moved past grief and rage. He reached a kind of quiet state that was not human. That was the moment he heard a sound. It was not exactly a voice. It felt like a chime ringing right behind his eyes. 2 words appeared in text that only he could see. They hung in the air over the shoulder of Marcus like a notification. The words announced that the cashback system was now online. The pupils of his eyes flickered. A window unfolded in his vision. He saw various menus and a pulsing icon shaped like a stack of coins. A calm and businesslike greeting message welcomed the host. It stated that the grief threshold was met. The system confirmed the betrayal index. It began initializing the sovereign account. Adrian did not move a single muscle. Marcus continued to laugh at him. The rooftop remained buzzing with noise. Adrian stood there with his ribs still cracked. His mother was gone and the world felt cold. A floating menu in the sky offered him one starter coin. It also offered one free question and one first purchase. Adrian blinked his eyes slowly. The menu asked what he would like to spend his first coin on. Adrian looked past the interface. He looked at Marcus and then at Vanessa. He looked at the hotel around them. The building was 60 floors of glass and gold. It was the crown jewel of the city. The place hummed with wealth and cruelty. Adrian looked at the bar in the corner. He saw a bottle of water sitting on top of the counter. He took one long and slow breath. For the first time in 3 months, a small and cold smile appeared. He thought that trash might leave through the back door. However, it always comes back through the front. This time, the trash would own the door. Adrian walked toward the bar. The crowd did not part for him this time. People shifted in confusion instead. Marcus continued to smirk at the memory of stomping the necklace. He waited for his disgraced former friend to leave in shame. Adrian did not shuffle away. He walked with a straight spine. He walked like a man who just remembered a simple task. Adrian reached the bar and set one coin on the counter. The coin materialized in his palm from a system pocket. It looked like a magic trick that nobody else could see. The bartender was new and frowned at him. The worker did not know that the crowd just humiliated this man. He only saw a customer with a busted lip and a coin. Adrian asked for one bottled water. The bartender slid the drink across the counter. Adrian slid the coin back to complete the transaction. The sky inside his head lit up with light. Numbers began to cascade in his vision. These were not slow or dignified numbers. They looked like fireworks and confetti. The menu celebrated the processing of the cashback. The base return was 1,000%. The system applied a betrayal multiplier. It also added a grief multiplier. A public humiliation multiplier increased the total even further. The small coin icon grew until it was a blur of zeros. A single number settled at the top of the screen. It showed 1.4 billion. He received that amount for a single bottle of water. Adrian did not flinch at the sight. He unscrewed the cap and took a sip. The system made another ping sound. A new menu unfolded in his vision. It informed the host that a first purchase was available. The system recommended a target based on the emotional context. It suggested the property on the premises. The estimated acquisition cost was 940 million. The remaining balance after the purchase would be 460 million. The system asked if he would like to proceed. He clicked the confirmation button using only his eyes. 60 floors below, a financial officer sat in a quiet office in Zurich. The man worked for a quiet holding company. He received a notification about an anonymous private buyer. The buyer wired a full valuation offer for the entire hotel. The offer was contingent on acceptance that same night. The boss of the company was on a yacht in the Aegean. This offer was 30% over the market value. The boss signed the agreement in 11 minutes. The wire cleared the bank in 4 minutes. At 9:47 in the evening, the ownership changed. Adrian Cole now owned the building where he stood. He placed the cap back on his water. Marcus finally noticed that his old friend had not left yet. Marcus did not like it when his victim stopped crying. He raised the microphone again and asked if Adrian was okay. He jokingly asked if his friend needed a napkin. The crowd chuckled at the comment. Adrian turned and walked back across the rooftop. He passed Vanessa and the crushed necklace on the floor. He walked right up to Marcus. Adrian did not touch the man or raise his voice. He tilted his head slightly and told Marcus to get off the roof. Marcus laughed with genuine delight. He told the crowd that Adrian had finally lost his mind. He asked the disc jockey to play his song again. Then he turned back to Vanessa. At that moment, the manager of the hotel arrived. He was an older man wearing a slate gray suit. He stepped onto the rooftop at a jog. The manager held a phone and looked very pale. He went straight past Marcus and Vanessa. The manager stopped in front of Adrian. He welcomed the man on behalf of ownership. The rooftop became completely silent. Marcus stopped laughing and asked what the joke was. The manager cleared his throat and apologized for the interruption. He informed the party that the hotel changed hands 12 minutes ago. The new owner requested a private evening. The manager announced that the party was over immediately. Vanessa claimed that her father had booked the rooftop. The manager stated that her father would receive a full refund. Marcus asked if the manager knew who he was. The manager had 30 years of experience in hospitality. He had been screamed at by much richer men. He asked Marcus to follow security to the elevator. Marcus turned to Adrian and asked if he had done this. Adrian did not answer his question. He walked past Marcus and Vanessa toward the crushed necklace. He crouched down on the floor. Adrian gathered every shard and every fleck of gold. He collected every crumb of the emerald. He poured the remains into a handkerchief from the manager. Adrian put the fabric in his pocket. It rested next to a photo of his mother. He stood up and glanced at Vanessa. She opened her mouth to say something mean. Adrian spoke before she could start. He told her to keep her ring. He suggested she would need it to pay for rent. Then he walked past her to the private elevator. The doors closed while Marcus screamed about lawyers. Inside the mirrored elevator, Adrian looked at his reflection. He saw his split lip and the bruises under his eyes. His suit was stained. A line of quiet text floated at the edge of his vision. It announced that his sovereign account status was active. The system welcomed the host home. He allowed himself to close his eyes for 1 full second. Then the doors opened on the lobby. He prepared himself to get to work. The cashback system followed a specific set of rules. This engine drove everything that happened next. Every dollar Adrian spent returned to him multiplied. Larger spending led to larger returns. Ordinary transactions received a base return of 1,000%. Meaningful purchases provided even higher multipliers. These included actions that hurt his enemies or helped people. Every expenditure by his companies also fed his account. The sovereign tier unlocked even more potential. A coffee shop selling a latte generated cashback for him. A construction firm paying a supplier also created cashback. Founding a hospital to treat patients for free provided massive returns. Money was no longer a limited resource for Adrian. Money became as essential as oxygen. He had been holding his breath for 3 months. He walked out of his hotel and into the street. He entered the first taxi at the curb. The driver was a tired man with a St. Christopher medallion. The driver noticed the busted lip on Adrian. Adrian told the driver to go anywhere. The driver shrugged and began to drive. Adrian pulled up the system menus. It felt like having a video game display for reality. He saw panels for spending and holdings. There was also a target panel. He noticed a section for loyalty slots. Right now, all 5 slots were empty. He tapped the holdings section. It showed 1 hotel and 460 million in capital. He opened the spending marketplace. He saw categories for real estate and corporations. There were also sections for debts and media. He started by looking at the debts category. He searched for his own name in the system. He found everything that he supposedly owed. His enemies had piled these debts on him. He owed 60 million to the firm of Vanessa. He owed 20 million to a company owned by Marcus. There were 80 million in personal guarantees. The total included interest and penalties. Someone had even added dirty loans while he was in a cell. He paid all of it with 1 tap. $180 million went out the door. The system celebrated with more multipliers. The grief bonus remained active during this transaction. The return totaled $1.9 billion. The taxi driver looked in his mirror. His passenger looked like he was breathing for the first time. Adrian decided to pay the kindness forward. He asked the driver what he owed for the taxi. The driver was confused by the question. Adrian asked again about the debt on the vehicle. The driver thought this was a conversation about a tip. He admitted that he owed $41,000. The interest rate on the loan was very high. The driver said he would be paying the debt for years. Adrian told the man to pull the car over. The driver complied with the request. Adrian looked at the medallion on the dashboard. It was the same kind his father used to wear. He tapped the system and sent a wire transfer. The debt was fully paid and forgiven. He included enough money to buy another taxi for the brother of the driver. The phone of the driver began to buzz. His wife was screaming with excitement on the line. She mentioned a notice about the paid loan. Adrian told the man to keep the change and drive safely. He stepped out of the car and walked 2 blocks. A new menu opened in his vision. The first loyalty slot activated. It showed the face of the taxi driver. Adrian did not ask for this to happen. However, the system followed its own rules. It did not just want him to buy items. The system wanted him to build a personal army. These would be people who owed him their lives. Adrian was fine with that. He had a list of names. He opened the target panel and typed the name Elias. Elias was 19 years old. He was skinny and had a face like a nervous puppy. 3 months ago, he worked a birthday event on a rooftop. He was doing a favor for a friend in a catering job. It paid $100 a night. Adrian barely remembered him back then. However, he remembered him now. Elias was the only person on that rooftop who did not laugh. In fact, Elias tried to help. Adrian fell and split his lip on the table. Elias immediately ran to get a towel. Marcus intercepted the towel and threw it on the floor. Marcus stepped on the cloth and fired Elias on the spot. He claimed Elias showed disrespect to the guest of honor. Elias lost his job and faced a blacklist. Public relations teams for Marcus made sure no event company would hire him. Elias was paying for his sister's medical treatment out of his own pocket. Without work and under a blacklist, his life fell apart. He spent 6 weeks sleeping on the floor of a friend's home. He washed dishes at a diner for cash under the table. His sister missed her last 2 treatments. Tonight, Elias was scrubbing plates. His hands were cracked and painful. He cried quietly while cleaning a rack of glassware. The diner planned to close next week. Elias did not know how he would feed or save his sister. A shadow appeared at the pass-through window. Elias looked up and saw a man in a ruined suit. The man had a split lip and kind eyes. Elias almost did not recognize him. When he did, his stomach dropped with fear. He stammered that he was sorry and did not want any trouble. Adrian asked the young man to come outside for a moment. Elias expected more blame but followed him into the alley. Adrian mentioned the night on the rooftop 3 months ago. He recalled how Elias ran for a towel. Elias flinched at the memory. Adrian simply thanked him. The face of the young man crumpled with emotion. Adrian asked for the name of his sister. Elias was confused but provided her name. Her name was Emma, and she was 12 years old. She suffered from leukemia. Adrian nodded as if he were filing the information away. He then opened his internal systems. He did not do this visibly. It happened behind his eyes. Adrian asked many questions over the next 4 minutes. Elias answered every one of them. He spoke about the clinic, the doctor, and the treatment. He detailed the debt and the outstanding balance. He described where they lived and the lack of heat. Elias explained his own debts and the location of his mother. He admitted he had never handled money for a business. Elias was exhausted and answered everything truthfully. Adrian pulled out an old and scratched mobile phone. He bought it from a corner shop with cash from a taxi driver. Adrian typed in an address and handed the phone to Elias. He told Elias to show up at 8 in the morning. He told him to bring his sister. A private clinic would cover everything. Elias blinked in disbelief. He told Adrian that he could not pay him back. Adrian replied that he did not want repayment. Elias asked why he was chosen. Adrian explained it was because Elias was kind on his worst night. He was now collecting on that kindness. Adrian placed a firm hand on the shoulder of the young man. He stated that he was about to build something. He needed a partner who knew what it felt like to be stepped on. He offered the position to Elias. The young man said yes before Adrian could even finish. An internal system chimed. The second loyalty slot was now filled. 2 weeks passed. Emma stayed in a private ward that looked like a hotel suite. Adrian bought the clinic on the way there. The mother of Elias sat in a comfortable chair by the window. She held the hand of her daughter. She wept quietly every 10 minutes. She had been ready to say goodbye. Now, she watched color return to the cheeks of her child. Elias wore a suit for the first time in his life. A tailor came to his door, and the suit fit perfectly. He did not recognize himself in the mirror. Adrian met him in the hospital cafeteria. The cafeteria was now a full restaurant with professional chefs. Adrian never did things halfway. They sat at a corner table. Adrian slid a folder across to him. Inside was a corporate charter for an offshore holding company. It was hidden behind 3 shell entities. Elias was listed as the chief financial officer. Adrian was not listed anywhere. The company already held $14 billion in assets. Elias stared at the papers and could barely breathe. Adrian told him he would learn everything very fast. He promised to provide tutors, lawyers, and analysts. Elias would handle the financial side of daily operations. He would serve as the public buyer for the company. The name of Adrian would not touch anything yet. Everyone would underestimate the young man. Adrian noted that was the entire point. Elias mentioned he was only 19. He had dropped out of school at 16. Adrian replied that he had done the same thing before building a company. He believed Elias was smarter than he had been at that age. Elias just needed the chance to prove it. For the first time in months, Elias laughed. It was a small and wobbly laugh, but it was real. Adrian continued with the plan. They would make Elias look ridiculous on paper. He would appear as a young and flashy gambler. Rumors would say he inherited money from a dead aunt. Elias would wear expensive watches to industry parties. He would act slightly unintelligent. Every serious player in the city would dismiss him. Elias asked what would happen next. Adrian smiled slightly. He said that when the time was right, they would find out the truth. The spoiled kid with the fake trust fund would own them. Elias grinned and asked when he should start. Adrian told him that he already had. Meanwhile, 60 blocks to the north, Vanessa was at the divorce office. She wore white because she was that kind of woman. Marcus planned to pick her up afterward. She signed the documents with a flourish. She believed she had won the war. Vanessa thought Adrian had vanished into a hole for broken men. She thought the hotel event was just a mercy party. Her lawyer showed her a settlement number. The team for Adrian agreed to give up all claims. They only asked for a symbolic $1 payout. Vanessa laughed so hard she snorted. She signed the paper. She wrote a fake dollar amount as a joke. Everyone in the room laughed. Cameras clicked for the press outside. She walked out feeling radiant. Vanessa did not know the truth behind the paperwork. The lawyer for Adrian was actually a partner at a top firm. A mysterious holding company had quietly bought that firm. The divorce settlement included a clause about future business ventures. It sounded harmless. However, it was a legal net designed to catch Vanessa. Adrian was buying up the world she lived in. She skipped to the car while humming. Now the story turns to Claire Rowan. Claire sat in a leaking studio apartment eating cold noodles. She was 31 years old. She was one of the sharpest risk analysts on the continent. 2 years ago, she led the risk department for Marcus. She flagged a project and reported that environmental reports were false. She warned that the development zone numbers were cooked. Claire warned that people would die if they broke ground. She said the company would sink. Marcus fired her the very next day. He told the industry she was unstable. Claire sued for wrongful termination and lost. The lawyers for Marcus were better, and his witnesses were bought. She had to pay all the legal costs. Claire lost her apartment and her savings. Her fiancé left her because of the legal debt. She spent her time consulting for tiny nonprofit groups. She ate cheap noodles to survive. While she was eating, her buzzer rang. A courier handed her a plain white envelope with no sender. Inside was a printed card. The card said they knew about the Atlas project. They agreed with her findings. It asked her to come to an address the next morning. It told her to bring her file. A company car waited outside. Claire was not stupid and suspected a trap. However, she was tired of being called a liar. She decided to go. A driver took her to a modest office in the financial district. She went to the top floor. She entered a room with a man behind a plain desk. He had a scar on his lip. There was a laptop and a glass of water. There was no nameplate. He stood up and shook her hand. He thanked her for coming. Claire asked who he was. He replied that he was the person who bought the Atlas debt. Her stomach flipped. He said he needed someone to weaponize risk analysis. He did not want to defend companies. He wanted to use risk as a scalpel. He wanted to use it against those who ruined her. Claire asked him to define ruined. Adrian slid a folder across the desk. It contained documents she had never seen before. There were records of bank transfers from Marcus to a judge. She saw screenshots of a smear campaign order. There were photos of meetings. Board members decided to destroy her in those meetings. The file included names, dates, and amounts. The hand of Claire shook a little. Adrian said he already paid her student debt. He also cleared her civil judgment. Her record was now clean. This was a gift for showing up. It belonged to her even if she refused the job. Claire asked what would happen if she accepted. Adrian explained she would lead a financial warfare unit. Her only client would be him. She could choose her own title and budget. Her first target would be the man who insulted her. She would walk into his boardroom and turn off his lights. Claire was quiet for a long moment. She asked if she would get a corner office. Adrian told her she would get the whole floor. She agreed to the deal. The third loyalty slot was now filled. 2 people remained. The story moved to Nolan Pierce. Nolan stood on a loading dock in the rain. He tried to stop a team from taking his last truck. He used to run a large freight company. He built it from a single rig left by his father. 2 years ago, he undercut Marcus on a bid. Nolan won a large government contract. A week later, regulators began flagging his fleet. He faced daily inspections and heavy fines. A suspicious accident killed one of his drivers. Lawsuits followed and the contract was pulled. The business went to the logistics arm owned by Marcus. The bank pulled his line of credit. His cousin ran off with the remaining cash. Nolan lost his company and his marriage. He was 44 years old, but looked much older. He stood between the workers and his truck. He yelled for one more week. The lead worker was bored and did not care. A black sedan pulled into the yard. Elias stepped out of the car in his sharp suit. He felt nervous and had rehearsed his lines. He walked up as if he owned the yard. In fact, he had purchased it 7 minutes ago. Elias thanked the men for their service. He informed them the vehicle now belonged to Meridian Holdings. All liens were paid. The worker checked his phone and saw the payment notice. He tossed the keys to Nolan and drove away. Nolan stood in the rain with his mouth open. He stared at the 19-year-old in the expensive suit. Elias asked Nolan to come with him. He said someone wanted to speak with him. Nolan asked if this was a scam. Elias asked him to please follow. He mentioned that he had skipped breakfast. Nolan laughed for the first time in a year. He got into the car. 20 minutes later, he sat across from Adrian. Adrian does not waste any time. He tells Nolan he knows that Marcus sabotaged him. Adrian has already purchased the government contract back. He did this quietly through a shell company. Adrian tells Nolan about the new resources. 140 new rigs are sitting in a Newark lot. These trucks are ready to roll immediately. Adrian wants his logistics arm to be the only reliable freight. He wants this freight moving in and out of the Atlas Development Zone. This goal should be reached within 6 months. When the supply chain for Marcus calls for a truck, Nolan decides the price. Nolan told Adrian that he did not understand who Adrian was. Adrian replied that being unknown was exactly the point. Nolan then asked why Adrian had chosen him. Adrian said it was because Nolan did not cheat despite having every reason to. Adrian noted that such honesty was rare. Nolan took a long breath as his eyes filled with emotion. He blinked back the tears like a man who never showed weakness in public. Nolan extended his hand and shook the hand of Adrian once with strength. The system chimed to indicate that loyalty slot number 4 was filled. 3 out of 5 slots were now complete. Adrian looked at the last empty slot. He knew exactly who would fill it. That person was currently sitting in a holding cell. Her name was Mara Voss. Mara used to run the personal security team for Marcus. She was former military with wolf eyes. Mara could identify every exit route in a room within 10 seconds. She eventually became too smart for her own good. She noticed cash going to improper places. Mara saw an intern receiving hush money. She noticed the child of a competitor was being followed. Mara started keeping records of everything she saw. Marcus eventually figured out what she was doing. Marcus was not a subtle man. Marcus had Mara framed for a crime. He planted a weapon she never owned in her car. Mara had been sitting in a holding cell for 4 months. Her hearing kept getting delayed on purpose. Her lawyer quit last week because he was not being paid. Her mother lived in a nursing home that Mara could no longer afford. Mara was about to lose her mother and her freedom simultaneously. Mara was in the visitation room, looking at a damaged paperback book. A guard told her she had a visitor. This was surprising, because she never had any visitors. She walked in and sat down. A man in a plain gray coat sat across the glass. He slid a phone through the pass slot. He told her to press play. Mara pressed play on the device. The video showed Marcus on his own security footage. He was ordering the frame job against Mara. Marcus told a subordinate exactly which car to use. He specified the weapon and the timing. The footage was time-stamped with clean audio. Mara stopped breathing for a moment. The man across the glass spoke again. He said this video would go to prosecutors tomorrow morning if she agreed. He promised she would be out by lunch. Her mother would be in a good facility by dinner. Mara would get everything she lost plus interest. Mara asked what would happen if she said no. The man said the video would be released anyway. She would not have to work for him. Mara could go home and live her life with no debt owed. He told her it was her choice and not a leash. Mara stared at the man. She asked who she would be working for. The man said she would work for someone building a wall around good people. That person needed someone standing on top of that wall. Mara set one condition for her employment. She wanted the man who planted the gun. She did not want him dead. She wanted him doing her paperwork for the next 20 years. Adrian allowed himself a tiny smile on his side of the glass. He told her the deal was done. The system chimed again. Loyalty slot number 5 was now filled. All slots were occupied. A new system perk was unlocked. A notification bloomed across the vision of Adrian. The Sovereign Cashback Authority was now available. Adrian closed his eyes for a second in the prison booth. Something inside him settled like a foundation into concrete. He now had 4 generals and 1 king. He had a hotel and a clinic. He owned a freight fleet and a financial warfare unit. Every loan Marcus ever took was being tracked and rerouted. Every utility line into the Atlas development zone was being bought. Adrian used boring subsidiary companies for these purchases. Marcus sat 30 stories up in his mirrored office. He was toasting himself with champagne. Marcus told the board this quarter would be their biggest ever. He raised his glass to the men who make history. Somewhere across the city, Adrian took another sip of bottled water. The countdown started. 6 months later, Marcus Vail was on the cover of every business magazine. The photos showed Marcus in a hard hat at a podium. He was grinning next to a scale model of the Atlas Development Zone. The project covered 2,000 acres, an area larger than most city centers. This area used to be the old chemical district. Marcus called it the future skyline of the century. He scheduled a groundbreaking ceremony with the mayor. Investors were flying in from 3 continents. Vanessa was on his arm at every event. She wore a new dress every time and many diamonds. Marcus did not know that he actually had a landlord. Adrian owned the land under the Atlas project. Marcus had paid full price for the surface parcels. He did this with cash in front of the cameras. Adrian owned the mineral rights beneath every single acre. He bought them for very little money from a bankrupt mining outfit. This happened 2 months ago. It cost Adrian about $11 million. The cashback system returned $2.4 billion. Those papers meant Marcus could not break ground below 15 feet without a signature. Marcus would eventually need that signature. No one can build a skyline without deep foundations. Marcus did not know this fact yet. He also did not know about the 3 utility companies. These companies provided power, water, and gas to the site. They were all owned by shell companies. Meridian Holdings owned those shell companies. Meridian belonged to Elias, who worked for Adrian. Marcus also did not know about his construction loan. The private bank underwriting the loan was acquired last week. Adrian was the new owner. Marcus did not know about his steel supplier either. The family firm was on the edge of ruin 2 months ago. Adrian bought their debt and forgave half of it. He kept the rest as leverage over the company. That family now sends every invoice to Elias for approval. Every road Marcus drives on is quietly owned by Adrian. Right now, Marcus feels like he is on top of the world. He and Vanessa are on the roof of his new tower. They are attending the launch gala for Atlas. There is a champagne fountain and an ice sculpture. 200 guests and the business press are in attendance. Marcus toasts and says the project will define the century. The room cheers for him. Vanessa kisses his cheek and leaves a red lipstick print. Cameras click throughout the room. Somebody notices an empty guest slot marked as private. Nobody arrives to fill that spot. The scene cuts across town. Adrian is on his own rooftop. It is a new penthouse that is modest by his current standards. He hates showy displays of wealth. The place has 1 glass wall and a fireplace. There is 1 framed photo on the mantle of his mother laughing. Claire, Nolan, Mara, and Elias are around a table. A boring corporate binder sits open before them. The title is the Atlas Response Plan. The binder has 4 tabs. These tabs are utilities, debt, supply, and public. Claire explains the plan for utilities. On her signal, the power grid can be diverted for maintenance. This diversion will last for 72 hours. Water pressure can be dropped to the minimum code level. They will cite a regulatory audit for this change. They will not touch the gas lines. They do not need to blow anything up. The site cannot pour concrete without power. Their schedule is the foundation of the public narrative for Marcus. Delays will make Marcus look incompetent by week 3. Nolan taps the supply tab. Every truck of steel and rebar comes through his yards. They can stall inspections or reroute for weather. They can cite driver hours to cause delays. 2 weeks of legal slowdowns will make the site a ghost town. The contractors will start losing their minds. Nolan has moles on 3 of the site crews now. Mara then taps the debt tab. They now hold 78% of the corporate debt for Marcus. This debt is spread across 7 key entities. The board members and Marcus do not know this yet. Even the chief financial officer is unaware. Mara has been helping the assistant of the chief financial officer. The assistant appreciates the anonymous scholarship for her son. She tells Mara that the officer does not read every memo. This gives them room to keep buying debt. Elias taps the public tab. Elias is no longer the nervous kid from the alley. He is a calm 19-year-old in a custom suit. They established a network of free clinics on the south side. These clinics are under the Coleridge Foundation. This was the maiden name of the mother of Adrian. They have also funded 3 university engineering programs. They rebuilt housing in the east neighborhoods. They quietly saved 4 hospitals from closure. All of this was done with no press coverage. When it is time to be visible, the city will already love them. Adrian asks when they will start. Claire smiles and says they have already started. 1 week later, Marcus is yelling at his site director. Concrete pours are behind schedule and steel is late. Contractors are demanding cash up front. Power has been out for 2 days in Sector B. The utility company claims they are doing maintenance. The city inspector keeps flagging tiny code issues. Marcus is threatening to fire everyone. His assistant says that Vanessa has arrived. Marcus rubs his temples and tells her to come in. Vanessa enters wearing a full sable coat. She kisses his head and says he looks tense. Vanessa sits on his desk and wants to talk about her money. She specifies that she wants to talk about her private money. The jaw of Marcus tightens. He does not want to discuss her separate funds. Vanessa has $43 million in her own name. She collected this through various means over the years. Marcus knows about a stash but does not know the size. Vanessa can smell the weakness in the project. She sees the delays and the inspector drama. 2 key investors have gone silent this month. Vanessa is doing the math on leaving Marcus. She asks Marcus if Atlas is going to succeed. Marcus is being humiliated by problems he cannot identify. He inflates his own success to compensate. He says Atlas will be the biggest development in 20 years. He says everyone with money wants in. Marcus tells her that his inner circle is getting allocations. He suggests she should use her safety account to buy in. He promises a 10 times return in 3 years. Vanessa asks if that return is guaranteed. Marcus told her that he was telling her the truth. Vanessa purred and kissed his cheek. She said she would think about it. Vanessa walked out of his office with her mind already made up. Marcus did not convince her. He tried too hard. Vanessa knew a sales pitch when she heard one. She decided not to buy into his project. She planned to hedge her bets. Meanwhile, Adrian started fishing for information. Adrian was in a coffee shop 3 floors below the office. He owned the shop now. He watched a live camera feed of Vanessa leaving. He watched her get into the car. Then he watched her make a phone call. He did not need to hear the call. Adrian already knew what she would do. Vanessa intended to contact the one person she could still manipulate. She chose the man from her past whom she treated like a puppy. Her phone found an old contact she never deleted. She hovered over the name. Adrian's phone buzzed and he picked up. He did not say anything. Vanessa asked if Adrian was there. He waited 3 long seconds before answering yes. Vanessa said it had been forever since they spoke. She mentioned hearing that he was doing well. She emphasized the word doing like a small joke. Vanessa heard that Adrian was now doing catering. She heard exactly what Marcus wanted her to hear. Adrian told her he was fine. Vanessa acknowledged their complicated past. She claimed they once had something special. Adrian felt coldly amused and let the silence sit. Eventually, he agreed that they did have something. His voice was slightly warmer than before. Vanessa heard warmth and an opening. She smiled like a shark. She suggested they meet for coffee to talk. Vanessa mentioned she was having a strange week. Adrian asked when she wanted to meet. She suggested meeting that night. Adrian told her to meet at 7 o'clock in the evening. He gave her the address of a small restaurant. He owned the restaurant on the west side. Every waiter worked for him. Every camera in the room belonged to him. Then he hung up. Elias sat across the table sipping a cappuccino. He asked if this meeting was wise. Adrian admitted it was not wise, but it was fun. Elias grinned at the response. Vanessa arrived at 7 o'clock in the evening. She wore a glamorous dress with a high slit. She wanted to remind him of what he lost. She also wanted any cameras to see them together. She wanted the world to think Adrian was lucky. Adrian was already at the corner table. He wore a plain white shirt without a jacket. A small scar remained from an old injury. He rose to greet her. He kissed her cheek and pulled out her chair. He played the role of a gentleman perfectly. Vanessa sat down and told him he looked good. Adrian thanked her and complimented her appearance. She glowed with pride. They prepared to order their meal. Adrian remembered her favorite expensive vintage wine. He ordered for her without asking first. Vanessa liked that gesture. She took a sip and sighed with contentment. She began with small talk about his health and life. Adrian gave soft and vague answers. He claimed to be doing a little consulting work. He said it was just enough to get by. Adrian mentioned living in a modest home. He laughed at himself to sound small. He was setting bait for her. Vanessa reached across the table to touch his hand. Vanessa said she wanted to be honest. Adrian encouraged her to continue. She admitted that she had made mistakes. Adrian looked down at her hand but did not pull away. He let her feel like she had control. She explained that Marcus was a difficult man. Her marriage was not what she hoped for. She claimed to think about her life with Adrian often. She wondered if she had been too harsh with him. Adrian softly asked why she was telling him this now. Vanessa took a deep breath. She said they could still be friends. She noted that friends look out for each other. Adrian nodded slowly. Then she admitted that she needed a favor. Adrian asked what favor she needed. Vanessa mentioned having a small private fund. She heard whispers about a big opportunity. She lowered her voice to speak about the Atlas project. Marcus claimed it was the biggest project of the century. The private investment round was closing this week. Vanessa wanted to invest every dollar she owned. Marcus offered her a great price on the investment. She admitted that she did not trust Marcus. If he lied, she would lose everything. If he told the truth, she would be rich. She could be free of him in 3 years. Vanessa looked at Adrian with calculated eyes. She reminded him that he knew how to build companies. She asked if the Atlas project was legitimate. Vanessa was asking the man she once destroyed for advice. She had stripped him of everything on his birthday. Now she wanted his help with her fortune. Deep down, Vanessa trusted Adrian more than Marcus. Adrian had never lied to her. He was always honest, even when it was difficult. Adrian looked at her for a long time. He could have told her the truth. The Atlas project was a disaster waiting to happen. The ground was toxic and reports were buried. A bank was about to foreclose on the property. The supply chain was being strangled by a hidden landlord. Adrian could have saved her $43 million. Instead, he picked up his wine and took a sip. He looked her in the eye. Vanessa leaned in close. Adrian told her it was the best chance she would ever get. Her eyes widened for a moment. He claimed that Marcus was actually underselling the project. The private investment and the upside were both real. Adrian called it a certainty rather than a bet. He reminded her that he understood financial balance sheets perfectly. He took another sip of wine. Adrian said he would invest everything if he had the money. He pointed out that she had the money instead. Vanessa stared at him. He smiled and gave her one more reason to believe. He told her this was the best future he could provide. He encouraged her to take the opportunity. Vanessa felt like she was winning emotionally. In her head, 40 million would become 400 million. She believed Adrian was still a little in love with her. He seemed to be helping her from the ruins. She felt like a queen with a loyal servant. This fit her ego perfectly. Adrian was counting on her vanity. She squeezed his hand and called him the smartest man. Adrian softly replied that she should have kept him. Vanessa smiled as if she had won the game. However, she had not won. Vanessa left the restaurant feeling triumphant. She called Marcus from her car. She told him she was ready to invest every dollar. She requested the paperwork immediately. That night, she sent $43 million to the Atlas project. The investment was locked with no chance for a refund. It had a term of 5 years. The penalty for leaving early was 92%. Marcus was thrilled to have the money. His fiancée had just covered a massive financial shortfall. Back at the restaurant, Adrian finished his wine. He nodded to Elias at the bar. Elias signaled that the transaction was complete. The subscription cleared and the trap was set. Adrian paid the bill and walked home in the rain. He felt a quiet joy. He owned more of the city than the people driving past him. That night he opened his computer system. A bright notification pulsed on the screen. It announced that the Sovereign Cashback Authority was ready. He tapped the button to activate the system. A calm assistant voice explained the new status. The Sovereign tier granted a 10-fold multiplier on all spending. This applied to every company he owned. All valid expenditures now generated massive cashback. Compounding was now enabled across all his corporations. The system recommended that he scale his operations carefully. Adrian looked at his financial numbers twice. His balance began to climb rapidly in real time. Every one of his companies was currently spending money. Utility companies bought transformers while clinics purchased medicine. Freight fleets bought diesel and hotels paid their staff. His foundation bought vaccines for the community. Every transaction fed back into his account tenfold. His balance climbed like a fast stock ticker. It grew by millions of dollars every second. Soon, it grew by tens of millions. Adrian sat on his balcony and drank water. He watched the numbers grow. He did not smile because he was not the type. He simply took one slow breath. Then Adrian started spending his wealth. He bought the largest medical group in the city. He used 6 layers of shell companies over 4 hours. He purchased the firm that falsified the Atlas reports. He bought the newspaper that Marcus used for publicity. Adrian also bought the last utility company. He acquired 40% of the construction firm for Atlas. He bought 3 police union pension bonds. He ensured the pensions remained healthy. Loyalty lasted longer than force. At 3 o'clock in the morning, his balance cleared $100 billion. He was now one of the richest men on earth. No financial journalist even knew he existed. 1 month later, the Atlas Development Zone was busy. Sector B covered 2,000 acres of partially built structures. Cranes moved concrete and rebar across the site. Marcus wore a hard hat for the cameras. He pretended to consult a blueprint. Deep in a foundation trench, a crew hid an object. They found an old sealed drum with a faded label. It featured a chemical company logo from 40 years ago. They found many more corroded steel drums. Some were already leaking sludge and rust. A sweet and sickly smell filled the air. The site foreman screamed for everyone to leave. It was too late for some. A drum under pressure from a jackhammer finally failed. A pocket of gas ignited from a nearby spark. The spark came from a torch 2 meters away. There was a flash and a heavy sound. A slow and ugly chemical fire began to spread. 6 workers were injured and on the ground. 2 crews ran to pull them out. The site alarm began to blare. Within 11 minutes, 3 ambulances arrived at the site. These were not city vehicles. They were private units from Coleridge Response. The paramedics moved with military precision. They wore full protective gear and carried burn kits. They stabilized 4 workers immediately. They airlifted 2 others to the hospital. They used special materials to neutralize the leak. The team even had the correct blood types ready. They clearly knew this would happen. The site foreman was on her knees in shock. She asked how the paramedics arrived so quickly. A paramedic explained they were staged 3 blocks away. They were told an incident might occur this week. The foreman could only stare in silence. City ambulances arrived 17 minutes after the call. By then, all 6 workers were stable. None of the workers died from their injuries. This fact would become important later. Marcus was at a magazine shoot during the accident. He took the call and stepped outside. He asked his site director for a report. A long silence followed the explanation. Marcus told the director to bury the story. He did not want anyone to know about the incident. His public relations chief was already on the case. Staff drafted statements. They called investigators and regulators. Money changed hands. The standard industry machinery for burying an accident began to move. That night at 11 in the evening, the Atlas story broke anyway. The report did not use the sanitized version from the public relations team. Instead, the story revealed the truth. Every major newspaper, wire service, and online outlet carried the news. The story remained the same across all platforms. An illegal chemical burial site had been sealed 40 years ago. It sat directly under Sector B of the Atlas facility. Environmental reports had identified this exact hazard 4 years prior. Senior leadership at Vale Development suppressed those reports. The articles included the original engineering documents as evidence. These documents were signed and dated. One document featured handwriting from Marcus. He initialed an instruction to keep the information internal until the environmental profile was revised. An internal legal memo was also attached. It warned that executives could face criminal liability if the news leaked. The article named 3 of those executives. Marcus was one of those men. His phone rang 6 times in the next 4 minutes. Marcus did not answer. He stared at a television in his bedroom. Vanessa stood in the doorway wearing a silk robe. She called out his name. Marcus did not turn around. She asked what all of this meant. Marcus claimed it meant nothing. He promised they would fix the situation. Vanessa asked about her money. Marcus assured her that her money was safe. She stared at his back for a long time. The next morning, 5 men in dark suits entered the lobby. They arrived at the Vale Development Office. 2 men were federal agents. 3 men represented the state. They were polite and requested specific records. A woman in a black coat escorted the agents. She had red hair pulled back tight. Marcus did not notice this detail immediately. Claire Rowan walked past the security desk. She signed in using her real name. Nobody stopped her because she carried nothing threatening. She held a briefcase in her hand. She took the elevator to the executive floor. Claire walked into the boardroom without knocking. 12 men in ties sat around the table. They were holding an emergency session. Marcus sat at the head. Marcus spoke with his lawyer on speakerphone. His face appeared gray. Claire set the briefcase on the walnut table. She opened it and pulled out one document. She slid the paper across the table. She greeted the men in the room. Marcus looked up and recognized her. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. Claire spoke for the majority holder of their senior debt. She formally called in the full balance for all 7 corporate entities. The combined principal and interest totaled $6.1 billion. Payment terms were printed on the page. They had 72 hours. The room fell silent. Marcus argued that the situation was impossible. He said the debt was spread across 4 banks and 11 lenders. Claire replied that the situation had changed. She tapped the document. All debt had been consolidated 2 months ago. She told him to verify this with his chief financial officer. The chief financial officer sat 3 seats down. His skin turned the color of old paper. He did not verify the claim. He already knew the truth. The man had avoided that stack of memos for 6 weeks. Marcus stood up and pointed at Claire. He asked who owned the acquiring vehicle. Claire pulled a remote from her pocket. She pointed it at the boardroom screen. The display turned on. A video call was already dialed. The image on the screen became clear. Adrian sat at a desk. He wore a plain white shirt and held coffee. A photo of a laughing woman hung on the wall. He lifted his mug and took a sip. Adrian looked straight into the camera. He greeted Marcus. The knees of Marcus gave way. Marcus grabbed the edge of the boardroom table. The chief financial officer stood up briefly. Then he sat back down in silence. The head of public relations deleted messages from her phone. She did this quietly under the table. 2 board members looked at Marcus. They treated him like a stranger from the street. Adrian sipped his coffee on the screen. He noted that it had been a long time. Marcus spoke the name of Adrian with a dry throat. Adrian remarked that Marcus looked tired. Marcus accused Adrian of being behind everything. Adrian disagreed. He said it was the work of many smart people. He asked if Marcus remembered Claire. Marcus had called her unstable in 3 magazines. Claire stood at the table without reacting. She stared at Marcus like a wolf watching a slow rabbit. Adrian asked if Marcus remembered Nolan. Marcus had crushed his freight company using fake inspections. Marcus looked out the window. A line of black trucks sat in the loading bay. Each truck featured a small mountain logo. This was the fleet of Nolan. The trucks were not delivering goods. They were waiting. Adrian asked if Marcus remembered Mara. Marcus had planted a weapon in her car. The security chief stood at the back of the room. He was a nervous man promoted after the departure of Mara. He saw the mountain logo through the window. The man reached for the door handle to leave. 2 of the people from Mara were already in the hallway. The security chief sat back down. Adrian asked if Marcus remembered Elias. Marcus asked who that was. Adrian smiled slightly. He said that was exactly the point. Elias was not in the room. At that moment, he appeared live on a business television channel. He wore a charcoal suit. Elias explained that Meridian Holdings was acquiring public shares. This move would protect 12,000 workers at Vale. He stated that Meridian would not protect former executives from criminal charges. The founder of Meridian preferred to remain private. He was a longtime supporter of ethical development. The news anchor asked Elias about his age. Elias smiled and replied that he was old enough. Back in the boardroom, Adrian set his mug down. He told Marcus what would happen next. The 72-hour window was the polite version. Federal agents downstairs had a warrant for environmental records. An internal source at Vale delivered those records anonymously. Marcus turned his head quickly. The chief financial officer avoided his gaze. Marcus accused the man. The chief financial officer quietly mentioned the tuition for his daughter. Adrian noted that everyone in the room had a reason. Marcus had provided those reasons himself. Agents would soon arrest Marcus. The charges included environmental fraud, obstruction, and conspiracy. Authorities were freezing all his assets. This included accounts, properties, and private jets. A judge signed the order at 7 in the morning. Marcus claimed his offshore accounts were protected. Adrian replied that they already had seized them. This happened 3 weeks ago. He mentioned the yacht was sold on Tuesday. Marcus made a wet, cornered sound. Adrian leaned forward to say one more thing. The $43 million from his fiancée was audited. This was the money taken as a private investment. The investment she was promised did not exist. It was a complete fabrication. Marcus used her money to cover payroll last week. The face of Marcus went blank. Auditors would arrive at her door tomorrow. She would discover 3 specific things. First, her $43 million was gone. Second, she was a co-signer on the fraud. Third, she was legally responsible for payments to other investors. Marcus tried to speak, but nothing came out. She would owe more than she had ever owned. Her name appeared on every document. Adrian picked up his mug again. He reminded Marcus to keep his friends. He ended the call. The screen went black. Nobody in the boardroom moved for 6 seconds. The doors opened. 4 federal agents and 2 police officers entered. A woman named Mara followed them. She was no longer in handcuffs. Mara held the door open for the officers. Mara walked up to the security chief. She smiled and asked if he remembered her. The man tried to speak. She told him to remain silent and walk. The security chief walked away. The lead agent turned to Marcus and read his rights. Marcus did not resist. He did not look at the agents. He stared at his reflection in the table. It was the first time in 15 years he had nothing to hide behind. They cuffed Marcus and walked him through the lobby. Cameras were everywhere. Elias had tipped off the press. Elias was 19 years old. He learned that image is a valuable currency. Marcus walked out of the building with his coat over his head. Board members left one by one. Claire stayed behind. She sat in the chair of Marcus at the table. Claire opened a laptop and started working. Meridian now owned 100% of Vale Development. The 12,000 employees belonged to the team of Adrian. Claire worked to protect their jobs and pensions. That was not the part the internet remembered. The internet remembered the 19-year-old chief financial officer. He promised that no worker would lose their livelihood. Every injured employee would receive full care and compensation. This came from the foundation of Meridian. The city lost its mind. For weeks, people had noticed strange things. A new free clinic opened on the south side. A neighborhood rebuild finished 6 months ahead of schedule. Ambulances were faster than city units. A quiet, invisible hand supported the city. Now that hand had a name. It was Meridian. By dinner time, every social feed whispered another name. That name was Adrian Cole. By nightfall, the city had rewritten the story. 2 years ago, Adrian Cole was a disgraced husband. He was known for a viral birthday video. Tonight, he was the ghost benefactor. He had been quietly buying the city to give it back to the people. The birthday video was replayed. The room laughed at him. The camera panned across their faces. Now the internet knew exactly who each of them was. A running joke appeared by 10 in the evening. It claimed that laughing at Adrian would ruin a credit score. Some of those people were already having a difficult year. The parents of Vanessa were having a very difficult year. Their family firm was quietly stripped 4 months ago. The owners did not notice the change. Vanessa's father never actually read a spreadsheet. He signed the sales paperwork. He believed he was signing an operational restructure. He was wrong. The firm was sold to a fashion buyer group. This group was a subsidiary of the Meridian Company. 2 weeks ago, the group informed the parents of the change. Their consulting fees and personal cars were terminated. Their personal driver and residence allowance were also canceled. That termination happened yesterday. Today, the parents were told to vacate the family mansion. The mansion was listed as corporate housing on the books. The parents pretended not to know that fact. Vanessa's father stood in his own driveway. He watched movers put a collection of ceramic dogs into a box. The box was marked for donations. His wife screamed at him. He told her that everything would be fine. He suggested calling Vanessa for help. Vanessa was not going to help. She sat on the floor of a hotel bathroom. She wore a robe and watched a video from her bank. Her personal accounts were frozen pending an investigation. Every single account was blocked. $43 million appeared as a footnote at the bottom. The rest was an asset seizure related to fraud filings. Her private jet card was canceled. Her personal credit cards were also canceled. Her diamonds now belonged to an insurance entity. A courier service was scheduled to retrieve the jewelry later. She called her lawyer. The lawyer did not pick up the phone. In fact, the lawyer resigned that morning. He sent a polite resignation by email. She called her father. Her father screamed about ceramic dogs into his phone. She called Marcus. His phone went straight to a federal voicemail message. Finally, she called her mother. Her mother told Vanessa to come home. Then her mother spoke more quietly. She said they might need to make a plan. After a brief pause, her mother changed her mind. She told Vanessa not to come home yet. The family had been asked to leave. Vanessa hung up the phone. She sat on the bathroom floor and cried. She was scared for the first time in 10 years. She did not cry for the cameras this time. Eventually, Vanessa put on her makeup. She put on her second best dress. Her best dress had already been seized. Her second best dress was still in her hotel wardrobe. She called for a car. The car company said her card was declined. She promised to pay with cash. The driver had heard her name on the news all day. He still showed up to drive her. He wanted to say he had her as a passenger. She had him drive her far to the north. They went past the last suburbs. They drove up a private road she had never seen. 2 polite men in dark coats manned a gate. They checked her name on a tablet. The men did not smile as they waved the car through. The driveway curved for a long time through the trees. A huge and elegant estate stood at the top. The building was made of glass and stone. It was modern and quiet. This was the home of Adrian. Nobody knew about this house yet. The car pulled up to the front steps. It started to rain heavily. Vanessa got out of the car without an umbrella. Her hair was ruined instantly. She walked up the front steps and rang the bell. Her hands shook as she waited. The door opened. A woman named Mara stood there in plain clothes. Mara looked Vanessa up and down. Vanessa stated that she needed to see Adrian. Mara replied that Vanessa did not need to see him. Vanessa pleaded with her. Mara considered the request and then stepped aside. Vanessa walked into the house. The foyer was warm and quiet. She could smell the scent of wood from a fire. She walked past a hallway with one photo. It was a photo of Adrian's mother laughing. Vanessa felt her stomach turn. Mara led her to a study. Adrian sat at a desk. He was writing on paper with a pen. He did not look up when they entered. Mara announced their arrival. Adrian thanked her and Mara left the room. Vanessa stood there dripping water on the rug. She recognized the rug immediately. She had picked it out 4 years ago. Adrian had kept the rug from their old home. She recognized a small wine stain in the corner. She remembered laughing and blaming him for the spill. Adrian finished writing and capped his pen. He looked up. Adrian told her to sit down. She sat and waited in the silence. Finally, she told him she knew how this looked. Adrian asked if she really knew. She said she knew she had hurt him. Adrian noted that she used the past tense. She swallowed and repeated that she knew she hurt him. She admitted to doing unforgivable things. She admitted to laughing at him. She mentioned the trash line. Adrian raised a finger to stop her. He said he did not need her list of mistakes. He had lived through those moments. Vanessa asked why he let her into the house. Adrian gave her a cold answer. He wanted her to remember how it felt to ask. He wanted her to ask someone who owed her nothing. Her eyes filled with tears. She hated that she was crying. She told him she had nothing left. Everything she owned was frozen. Her parents were being evicted from their home. Her lawyer had quit. She could not stay in her hotel past tomorrow. Marcus was in a jail cell. Adrian said that he already knew these facts. Vanessa pleaded for his help. Adrian asked what she wanted from him. She took a breath and lifted her chin. She made her final move. She reminded him that they were once married. She said they had good years together. She asked for a small allowance or a job. She even offered to be his wife again. Adrian did not laugh or smile. He looked at her like a receipt for a returned item. He stood up and walked to a cabinet. He took out a small velvet box. He set the box on the desk. He told her to open it. Inside was the emerald necklace. It had been painstakingly reassembled. Every crushed shard was fitted into a new gold setting. Some of the emerald was now dust set in resin. It was unmistakably his mother's necklace. The necklace was whole again on a bed of velvet. Vanessa's hands started to shake. Adrian said his mother wore this at her wedding. She died in a ward with no medicine. This was the last thing he had. Her fiancé had stepped on it while Vanessa laughed. Vanessa cried silently as he spoke. Adrian said he rebuilt it for his family. He did not rebuild it for her. He closed the box. He addressed her offer to be his wife again. He said he had a price. Her head snapped up. He told her to stand up right now. He wanted her to repeat a specific line. He wanted the line she said on his birthday. He wanted it word for word. He wanted her to say it exactly as she had before. Vanessa shook her head in protest. Adrian insisted it was the price. She asked why he wanted this. He said she needed to hear herself say it. He wanted her to speak in a quiet room. Vanessa sat there for a long time. Then she stood up. Her makeup was running down her face. Her dress was soaked and her hair was messy. She looked like a woman who had run out of options. She spoke in a small and cracked voice. She said that trash leaves through the back door. Adrian did not move. He told her to say it again like she meant it. She flinches but repeats the line louder. He demanded she say it one more time. She said it a third time. Her voice cracked in the middle of the sentence. The room became very quiet. Adrian thanked her for the performance. He walked to the study door and opened it. Mara was still waiting outside. Adrian asked Mara to show the guest out. He specified the back door. Vanessa let out a soft sound of despair. Mara stepped forward to lead her away. Adrian told Vanessa there was one more thing. He said she was welcome to work. A hotel hall in the city needed cleaners. His hotel group owned that specific hall. If she arrived at 6 tomorrow, they would hire her. The job paid an hourly wage. It included a bunk in the back for 3 months. There would be no favoritism and no cameras, just work. Vanessa stared at him in shock. He said she could say no to the offer. He did not want to be cruel. He wanted to be fair. He told her this was more mercy than she showed him. Then he said goodbye to Vanessa. Mara walked her out through the back door. At 6 the next morning, Vanessa Vale arrived at the hotel. She wore shoes that used to be very expensive. She asked the manager for a shift. The manager gave her a mop. Vanessa took it and began to work. 3 weeks later, Adrian visited Marcus. They sat across a table in a federal detention facility. Marcus wore an orange jumpsuit. Marcus had lost weight and looked tired. He laughed a jagged laugh when he saw Adrian. He called Adrian a ghost. Adrian said he would answer only one question. Marcus stared at him. Marcus had been thinking of questions every night. He asked how Adrian had defeated him. Adrian nodded. He said he gave Marcus access codes 3 years ago. He had trusted Marcus back then. Marcus used those codes to steal information for a year. He stole the Titan software architecture. Marcus presented the work as his own to Vanessa's father. They used it to trap Adrian in a marriage. Adrian said that Marcus only succeeded because he was allowed to. Adrian had not vetted him. He had fed Marcus and put him in the room. Marcus never actually built anything himself. Everything Marcus had was borrowed from what Adrian did not guard. When Adrian stopped being kind, Marcus lost everything. Marcus's face twisted in anger. He tried to speak but could only scream. Marcus shoved the table and a guard stepped forward. Adrian stood up and told him to enjoy the answer. He walked out and never saw Marcus again. 1 year later, a new medical center opened. The building was 12 stories of glass and green. It offered free care for anyone who walked in. It had a trauma unit and a pediatric wing. It was named after the maiden name of Adrian's mother. The city residents figured out the connection. Adrian cut the ribbon while wearing a plain suit. His team stood behind him. The mayor tried to give a long speech. Adrian took the microphone. He said the center was for people who could not afford medicine. He told the crowd to use it. He did not do any interviews. 2 years later, the Atlas Development Zone was finally cleaned. A Meridian subsidiary removed the chemical drums. The soil was rehabilitated and the land was rebuilt. It became a public district with low-cost housing and parks. A memorial garden was built in the corner. The garden had 2 benches side by side. A small plaque displayed the names of Adrian's parents. He went there once a week to sit and drink coffee. He never spoke to anyone. Vanessa remained in the city. She is still cleaning. Well-meaning people who recognize her have offered her better jobs 3 times. She has taken none of them. At some point during that first month, something changed inside her. This change was not softness or redemption. She now has a quiet and small understanding. If she takes anything from anyone, she owes something she cannot pay. She works and keeps her head down. She lives in her small bunk in the back. Her parents are in a modest facility across town. This senior facility is state-subsidized. Adrian technically funds this home. She visits them on Sundays. Her mother screams at her, and her father does not speak. She sits on the plastic chair between them and takes it. The scene changes to Marcus. He received a sentence of 22 years without parole. The environmental charges alone totaled 8 years. The fraud added the rest of the sentence. He appeals every year, but every appeal fails. Marcus works in the prison laundry. He has a lot of time to think about a code base. The scene changes to Elias. Elias is 21 years old now. He is the chief executive officer of the public arm of Meridian. His sister Emma is 15. She is in remission and on the honor roll. Emma wants to be a doctor. Adrian quietly set up a scholarship for her. Emma thinks it is from a foundation. She will find out the truth one day. Claire runs the financial warfare unit. This unit no longer needs to fight anyone. The unit is now the risk arm of a large private capital group. Claire works in a corner office. She has a fiancé she likes and a dog. Claire sleeps well. The rigs belonging to Nolan move freight for half the eastern seaboard. Nolan has remarried. He hums when he drives. Mara heads the protective services at Meridian. Mara never smiles at parties. She smiles at her mother. Her mother now lives in a good facility with actual dignity. Finally, there is Adrian. Adrian sits at a desk in the study of the house on the hill. He is answering an email from Elias about a hospital in another country. He signs the email and closes the laptop. Then he goes to the window. The city is lit up in the distance and stretches for miles. Half of the buildings he sees belong to him. He owns all the utilities and road maintenance contracts. He owns the medical group and the clinics. He remembers the old broken hotel where he once bled. That was where he bought his first bottled water. Now he sees new public towers where Atlas used to stand. He sees schools and trucks moving through the streets. The courier bikes and taxi medallions all thread back to him. The system, in his vision, is quiet now. It has not chimed in months. It does not need to chime. His balance is a number he does not check. Every second, someone spends money in every corner of the city. Every cent comes home to him tenfold. This wealth goes back out to another clinic or school. Entire neighborhoods are rebuilt with these funds. Somewhere in the system, a small line of text remains. It is hidden in a menu he rarely opens. He reviewed the text once and never deleted it. The message states that the host purpose is now fulfilled. He closes the menu. He picks up a small velvet box on the shelf. He opens the box. The necklace inside catches the last of the light. He whispers that they are okay now. He closes the box. Behind him, his 4 generals are waiting in the doorway. Elias holds a folder. Claire carries a laptop. Nolan has a phone. Mara wears her coat. A new project is starting. There is always a new project. This one is a rebuild in a coastal town after a flood. It will cost billions of dollars. He will spend it, and the money will come back. Adrian turns toward his team. He tells them it is time to work. Imagine a camera pulling back through the study window. It moves up over the estate and over the trees. It follows the long, dark road down to the city. The camera passes the clinic named for his mother. It moves past the memorial garden. 2 benches sit empty in the wind. The camera passes the banquet hall. Inside, a woman in a stained uniform is mopping. Then, the camera passes a prison window. A man in orange watches a small television. The television shows a story about a foundation. This foundation just donated a new wing to a hospital for children. The man in orange cries without making a sound. The camera keeps going up over the whole city. Every light in the city is on. Somewhere, a bottle of water clinks against a counter. Somebody drops a coin on marble, and the story ends.